All right, John, thanks for hanging out with me.
I appreciate the invite, man. I'll say this: I appreciate your perspective. Like you bring a really pragmatic voice to this whole conversation about chiropractic business,
Yeah.
and like you just had this episode that came out recently. I shared that was life's not fair for chiropractors. Now what? And
Yeah.
like we need more conversations like that because I don't think a lot of students are hearing that side of the real world struggles and things that go into walking this out day to day. It's not
Yeah.
what people lead with from the stage at a chiropractic college. So I appreciate that you bring that perspective. A good friend and I were talking about this recently. It's like we happened into I guess you could say, mentor who just kind of had that almost pessimistic, kind of view that was introduced to us as students early on. And so it kind of like tempered some of the unrealistic expectations that you come up with in school and all these other places. So I think that really helped us to prepare for, the real world afterwards. You still got to slog through it, but
Yeah.
I appreciate that you bring that voice to the conversation because it's something folks need to hear. And it's, sometimes the uncomfortable truths are the ones that are the most helpful. So
Yeah.
just to pat you on the back, I appreciate that you bring that on the podcast. So always fun to chat with you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I appreciate that you say that. I'll kind of give people because, like I said, I don't know if I'm going to add something to this on the video portion. So this will be really different than a normal podcast that I do, just because what I had done, John's helped me out before. Like we messaged each other back and forth on Instagram and stuff, and I had said to him before, like, hey, how are you doing these Instagram things you're doing? And he's like, jump on a live with me. And so we kind of did some back end stuff there. And then I recently was like, I wanted to move from Zoom over to Riverside, but I haven't actually used it before. So this is the first time I've actually recorded with the new software. So I got a hold of John and I was like, hey, you want to come on, do a podcast? We'll just talk shop. It'll be super informal. It'll just kind of be fun. So that's kind of what we're doing today is we're just kind of just talking about whatever. I do appreciate that you say that. I'm always trying to find that balance of, I want to be encouraging and optimistic, but I also want to be real. And I can be accused of being a pessimist. And I kind of how I view it in my own life. And because my wife sometimes will say that I'm being too pessimistic. Sometimes when I say stuff like I identify a problem, it isn't because I feel internally negative about it. It is because I'm a problem solver. So it's the way my brain works is I see problems all the time, and I'm constantly trying to figure out, like, how do you fix that? How do you fix that? How do you fix that? And I'm aware of the fact that sometimes when I'm constantly pointing out problems that may in fact, I don't want to dump on someone and have them be super negative, because the career as a chiropractor can be incredibly rewarding. It can be financially rewarding. It's definitely emotionally rewarding in terms of the interaction you have and the experiences you have helping people. But when you go to chiropractic college, they don't tell you the truth. Like, they don't tell you the thing they sell you to kind of get you to become a chiropractor. It makes it sound so much easier than what it actually is. And I think that's harmful as well, because unrealistic expectations make something harder than what it has to be. And growing a successful practice is already hard.
And it delays the time that it takes you to arrive at that conclusion and then start to take action in a positive direction.
Yep.
Right? Like, what's the point of that? And how is that productive? I was having a conversation with a colleague recently. We both went to Life University together, and he was reminding me of this first week at school. They do all these sort of like orientations and stuff. And the president literally said, in our orientation, you guys are all going to make $250,000 and, revolutionize the lives of your communities and stuff like that. And we're all just like, awesome,
Yeah.
And it's
Sweet.
like, what on what planet, is that an appropriate thing to say to these fresh folks that, at this point now it's easy to fact check that and find out that that's usually not the case. But it just, to your point about expectations, it sets a false expectation. And then when that expectation is not met in reality, you've got to do something with that conflicting experience, And so what a lot of folks do is leave the profession or find, negative ways to try to work toward that expectation becoming reality that are maybe not so great for the optics of our profession, or maybe are flirting with the borders of what we would consider ethical practice. So it just doesn't make sense to me to set folks up for a hard road. And I guess I was raised that way too, and it sounds like from listening to you, you probably were too, that like, hey, the world doesn't revolve around you and life is hard, and like that's normal, and it's okay. You're going to find success through it, but just understand that that's the road that most of us walk.
It is it's very, very strange, because I feel like the old man in the room. Like, I don't know how it happened. Like, I don't know how it happened. I don't know when it happened. I find myself saying a lot of the things my dad used to say to me. I find myself where I thought he was not cool, and he's kind of a fuddy-duddy, and he just didn't understand and whatever. And one of the things my dad used to say to me all the time, which I feel like sort of a really concise way of encapsulating his philosophy, and even sort of my philosophy, is when I would tell him like, oh, I want to play in the NBA someday. I want to be rich. I want to be this. I want to be that. My dad would say, just have a backup plan. And it wasn't his way. He didn't say like, well, that's dumb. Like, you couldn't possibly do that. Like, you can't. He didn't just squash my dreams, but he was fully aware of the fact that some of those grandiose things that I wanted to do or was thinking when I was a kid, when, let's be honest, you have no idea what you actually want. No. Like, this is the thing that people don't understand when they're doing these like vision boards and stuff like that, where it's like, the hysterical thing about that is that you 10 years ago, the one thing you would say about you 10 years ago is you 10 years ago, you were an idiot and you had no idea what you're talking about. And it's foolish to think that you 20 years from now would not look back at you currently and say, you're an idiot and you have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know what you want. You don't know which direction your life's going to go. You don't know what's best for you. And when you think that you do, that's foolish. And my dad was just wise enough to know, not only do I not know what I'm talking about and what I really want, but some of the things that I was really hoping for in my younger years, when I really didn't even know myself, were difficult. It's like, not everybody can play in the NBA. Not everybody can be a billionaire, whatever the crazy thing is. And like I said, it is balancing that thing of doing your best, becoming your best you, foraging ahead, but also balancing that with reality.
Yeah.
And people don't always do that.
Yeah, it's important to have those voices. Not everybody had the dad with that in their ear, or had a good coach or mentor, or someone in their life who would bring you back down to earth gracefully, and present both sides of it, because it is a paradox. Like, on one hand, I do think that it's worth your time and energy to try to get the most out of yourself, and to develop your interests and follow what you're curious about, and try really hard to do things that are interesting and incredible. But the flip of that is just understanding that day-to-day life is, even for those high achievers and for those folks, like, day-to-day life is mundane. It's just a bunch of habits and disciplines and routines, and it's not glamorous. And so I do think you're right. Like, coming out of school, I had a really different idea about the type of life and practice I thought I wanted or was supposed to want versus what I have now. And then when I had my son 5 years ago, that changed. And then I'm sure in more time it'll change again. So there's this weird self-help culture of like personal development gurus and stuff that make it seem like if you don't have all that stuff in place, the vision board and the affirmations and the positive, thoughts and energies and the perfect morning routine and all of this crazy stuff, that like you can't have a fulfilled and excellent life. And it's just not true. So a lot of us don't resonate with that message in the first place. So then you're left with like, all right, well, what am I supposed to do? Like in the real world, pragmatically and practically, how do I just make an effort that I can be proud of today, understanding that it is moving me in the direction of what I think I want now, but also provides momentum to change direction if and when those goals and objectives and desires change, because they will.
I think it's interesting that a lot of people, especially, I think the chiropractic profession really attracts dreamers. There's a lot of I want to change the world. I want to help people. I want to, I think in other professions, you'll find more people just saying, I want a job. Like, I want a good job. And I'm not saying that chiropractors don't also think that, but there seems to be kind of a loftiness and kind of a big idea. There's a big idea to chiropractic that really attracts dreamers and like a certain type of person. And on one hand, it's really good. But on the other hand, I think that a lot of times we don't understand, especially as young people, that the world you're going to change is actually going to be your spouse, your kids, your neighborhood, your town. Like, when you change the world, you can make the mistake of spending your entire life, and you'll even see this with successful chiropractors that go around trying to change the world, and they're spending every weekend away from their family at a seminar, or they're traveling here, going to this thing, going to that thing, and they're attempting to change the world when the world that actually is the most important, the world that when 5 years after you're gone, 10 years after you're gone, 20 years after you're gone, the people who are still going to be sad about that and have really mourn your loss and mourn that you are not there anymore. Those people are not the people that are at the seminar. Those people, those aren't your patients even. Like, and it's like, you have to understand, it's when my dad died about 8 years ago, and it really changed my perspective of what it meant to have a successful life. And it really changed my perspective of who's going to care when I'm gone. And I realized that there's a tiny, tiny, tiny number of people, no matter how big I am within chiropractic or any other industry. I could literally be like, even somebody like Kobe Bryant, who's obviously way more well known than I am. It's like he dies in a helicopter crash. Everybody makes a big deal out of it for about 3 months. And you know who the only people who are still sad about that every single day are? His best friends, his children, and his wife. Mm-hmm. The same people that are going to be brokenhearted 10 years after you die is going to be your spouse, your kids, and your best friends. And it's a terribly small world. And it's very, very unfortunate to spend your entire life neglecting the world that you can actually change and make a difference and have a legacy for a world. And it's even worse now with social media and everything else, where you're trying to make a difference in a world that you're never going to be able to make a difference. And it's sad because your priorities are messed up.
Yeah, and I think the idea of like small overlapping circles, right? It's like, rather than try to have this massive reach as one person, that just this ever expanding circle of influence where you are just the man and everybody's, in your wake. It's like, if more individuals were really dialed in to that small circle that is real, and is actually your main responsibility and the only circle that can be influenced by you in the way that you can influence it. It's like a bunch of smaller overlapping circles does have, a big ripple effect. And so you always have to do that first, right? Even if you want to be huge, you still have to do that first, and you
There's
have
nothing
to
wrong. There's nothing wrong with being huge.
master that before the next level is accessible. And just understand that at every stage of growth, because I've also seen this with friends and colleagues as like my career has progressed over the last 7 years or so, and I've seen people that we started on the same level and they just catapulted to this huge, level of volume and success, and then other folks that have, done different things, had a few failures, like just have surveyed and had enough experience where I've observed different trajectories, of my chiropractic colleagues. It's like, and you talked about this on this last podcast I was talking about, it's like, seeing it from the outside, but then also understanding and knowing sort of behind the scenes some of what is involved in these different levels.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I don't want that. I could never live the life that it takes to have that. It's not in alignment with my personal and professional values. So for me to chase after that, it's going to be a constant state of, missing the mark, because it's not true to, me as at the core. And so I think it takes time to kind of sort that out. And inevitably when you start, you just kind of have to emulate somebody. You have to pick a style that you think is, what you like and start working on that, but then you massage it and you hopefully, fine tune it over time. And, it's this interesting thing where we kind of maybe take ourselves a little bit too seriously. It's like you have the benefit of being on the other side, transitioning out of active practice and realizing like, hey, the world goes on. These people's lives didn't end because I closed my practice,
Yep.
And
that
I think
was a shock to me, by the way.
Yeah. And they may be listening right now going, Jerry, we need you. But it's like this big idea concept, and it instills such a level of such huge importance, and it's frankly a burden, that it's placed on us to like, be this force, in the lives of our patients. And it's like, in context, we're there to provide a valuable, amazing, completely, potentially life-transforming service for these folks. But one of the things that I do still appreciate about chiropractic philosophy is like, we don't even really get to take credit for our results. Like if folks get better, we go, well, that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
It's not because I'm so great. It's because of these self-healing, self-regulating mechanisms that we understand about this human form. And so, if things don't go according to plan, damn it, I got to get better. If things do go according to plan and it's a miracle, awesome. That's what you deserve and you came for, and I don't even get to take the credit for it. So I think it should keep us humble and keep us curious. But yeah, it's crazy, man. I know I talked with lots of students over the last couple of years as I've been a little bit more engaged on social media, and there's so many different perspectives coming at them now. I mean, we didn't, friend of mine, we were talking recently, it's like in school even there wasn't really social media. Like I graduated in 2016. It's not a lifetime ago, but it's like there weren't chiropractic influencers then. There wasn't this image out there for me to see 100 different people that are reaching hundreds of thousands of people with a style or a look or a message. I mean, we didn't have that exposure to so many different ideas, so it can really be confusing. And I can empathize, with students that are on that path and they're just trying to sort it all out. Have mentors and friends and ask tough questions, and just don't be too married, to any ideas that you have as a student, because inevitably they're going to morph. And if they don't, I think that's probably not a great thing, so just be open to the bumps. They're coming, and just hopefully you've developed the skills as a student. And this is why every time I talk to students, I tell them, quit freaking cheating. I know cheating is rampant on chiropractic college campuses. It's like you're not doing yourself any favors. Yeah. It's like you're not becoming the person that you need to become to go into the field and work hard and take care of suffering people and manage a business and train a staff and do all these hard things. Taking shortcuts is not preparing you to have that life that you think you want of being a successful doctor. So, that's every chance I get, I harp on that, but it's like, take this time that you're in school and understand that, like, it's not easier after. I just had a conversation with a couple recent grads that, their things did not work out the way that they thought they would out of school. And, it's a couple and they've got big time debt load, and, the expectations and reality are coming crashing down right now. And it's like, if you have not developed through this course of your chiropractic education some of the disciplines and the habits that enable you to deal with multiple challenges at the same time, multiple things that are unfair and out of your control, you missed out. I mean, that was a really good opportunity as a student to start navigating some of that. And life after school is not easier than life in school. It gets more complicated, and there's a lot more liability, and it's great, like you said, like all the things you said about how emotionally rewarding it is and how financially rewarding it can be. I mean, all that is true too, but the flip of that is there's a lot of hard decisions and hard choices to make and sacrifices too. So I'm pro like understanding both sides of the coin, and just giving folks an inside scoop, and like, hey, hopefully you listen to what Jerry says, you listen to these conversations, you take that feedback, you actually act on it, and you start out farther ahead than we did, and you do better. That's kind of the whole point. Is not to have you go learn the same hard lessons we learned. It's like, if we put this bug in your ear and you're really listening, hopefully you'll make better choices that will put you on a different path to not have that suffering and hardship and learn the same hard lessons the hard ways. But, just know that that's always a possibility too.
It's interesting that I don't think it's helpful to try to make hard things sound easy. I did a podcast, it's probably been years ago now, where I said that anytime you hear somebody say, all you have to do is, all you have to do is, whatever comes after that is either ignorant, it's a lie, or it's something that's actually not difficult. You probably don't even need someone to tell you, because it's not hard. And so, because you can't take hard things and summarize it into all you have to do is. So it's like, if you want to be a successful chiropractor, all you have to do is. There's no way to finish that sentence that's honest. And if you want to be big on social media, if you want to have your own podcast, if you want to have whatever, all you have to do is, and if you can boil it down, it's just not true. It's an oversimplification. It is either that person is purposely deceiving you, they're oversimplifying it, they're just not helping you, because hard things are hard. Now, I will say that when we have the opportunity now, because of social media, we can look around and we can see people doing things at very high levels. Like, let's say we talk about podcasting, you and I both podcast. It's like, you can look at someone like Joe Rogan. He makes it look easy. What he's doing is not easy. It's like, just because someone does something at a very, very high level, and typically the people who do things at the most exceptionally high level do make those things look easy. And you could sort of trick yourself into thinking that, oh, that's not hard, I could do that. And you're setting yourself on this path. As soon as you meet a little bit of resistance, you either don't lean into it, you bail on it, you quit, you think there's something wrong with you. There's all kinds of things that can happen because you set off on this path that you thought was going to be easy, maybe because someone told you that, or because you observed that with your own mind or whatever. And then the reality is you were trying to do something very difficult. Here's the sad thing. There are people who can do those difficult things who don't do those difficult things because they thought those were going to be easy. And it's just, I think the school is guilty of that. I think seminars are guilty of that. I think that people that get these interviews on podcasts are guilty of that, where, all you have to do is this, all you have to do is that, all you got to do is go to the BNI meeting and pass out all your cards and pass out, whatever. Just some stupid thing that, like,
if you had my phone script for new patient calls, all that
all you
stuff.
have to do is this report of findings. All you have to do is have my software. All you have to do is, and it's like, can we just all agree that hard things are complicated? And if you want to be a good parent, it's more than just one thing. And if you want to be a good spouse, it's more than just one thing. And if you want to be a good chiropractor and good business owner, it's more than one thing. And if you want to be a good podcaster, it's more than one thing. Like, stop making complicated things sound simple. They're not. And here's the thing, though. Here's the kicker. When you get really, really good at it, and the better you get at it, the easier it will become for you. And you may even get good enough that it looks easy, but just don't tell anybody that. That's not fair.
And even clinically, in what world would you tell your patients, being healthy is really easy?
Sure.
All you have to do is get adjusted.
All you have to do is drink water.
Or all you have to do is just eat a salad. All you have to do is just exercise, right? It's like, even in the midst of these simple ideas, right, there is layers of complexity to make those things reality. And I'm with you on that. And I think it's just, I don't even understand. Well, I guess the motivation for selling that message is to sell that message, you have something to gain from folks believing that there is a shortcut, right? And here's the crazy thing about chiropractic is, sometimes we're so critical of everybody else, but we claim this inside out philosophy. It's like, isn't that what the drug companies that we're always talking about say? Hey, look at this dancing in the fields. Just ask your doctor if this next thing is right for you. It'll make your life so easy. Just swallow the pill. Yep. And it's like, we say, wait a minute, that's not true. Health is complex. Health is multifaceted. Health requires, effort in a lot of different domains. So, sometimes we live with these apparent contradictions and don't recognize them. And I think that's why a lot of us, go through phases where we feel this internal conflict because it's like, man, all these contradictions that I've been trying to reconcile just don't, and like sometimes the effort is better spent on, to your point, leaning into the resistance and powering through it and developing strength and endurance and, fortitude in the midst of that rather than trying to get around it,
Yep.
and we encourage our patients to do that, when they're seeking us for, as a resource. And so it's, it's part of it. And if you're going to start a practice, it's going to be hard. If you're going to be an associate doctor in an office, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
If you're going to work part-time, IC, and raise a family as a mom, like it's going to be hard. Like there's going to be unique challenges with each person's circumstances
Yep.
and how you interface with the profession. So, making those choices is not always about like what's going to be the easiest. Sometimes those personal values and your core beliefs and the things that are actually really important to you help you choose like which hard thing is most appropriate for me. Which thing will I work through, that resistance and not bail. And, those are harder questions to answer, right? It's so much easier to just say, nope, you should be an associate for 2 years and you should go learn under someone and copy what they do. And then they'll finance your practice and then you'll go out and sign a $300,000 note to open an office that they own until you pay them off. And then you'll be successful like them and do the same thing. And it's like, yeah, that sounds a lot easier, but even that's not easy, right? So it is difficult to know yourself and to understand what's important to you, especially when the only thing you've ever done is sit in class, right? And that's the uncomfortable truth is like I had classmates that never even worked a job. They never had a boss.
Yeah.
And so just Dr. Jeff Schulten, who's an upper cervical chiropractor and an instructor in some of these diplomate modules I've been taking, he said a couple times this thing that I think is really sort of elegant, which is like embrace your ignorance, okay? Like you don't have to have stuff figured out. You don't have to be farther along than you are. In my personal philosophy, like when I started my practice and stuff was like, I don't need to be the best chiropractor ever. I need to be the best chiropractor with 3 months worth of experience, 1 year worth of experience, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Like for me, the idea is like, if I want to be the best, I just need to be a little bit ahead of the trajectory of the folks that were the best. Like wherever they were at this phase, if I can stay on pace with that or be a little bit ahead, I'm going to go in that direction, right? It's like you don't have to eat the whole elephant in one sitting, right? It's like just understand
Listen, the reality
the habits.
is you just have to be better than you were last year.
Exactly.
People grow at different rates. Like people improve. Like it's always funny that we sometimes look at other people as examples, and we'll be like, oh, well, the guy that did Kentucky Fried Chicken didn't start that until he was 50 years old, and we kind of use that as an excuse. And it's kind of like, I wouldn't look at anybody and say, well, this person is the youngest to do that, therefore I can do it, or this person started this when they're old. It's like, it's great to look around and see what other people have done. And I think one of the lies that we tell each other in culture, and you'll even hear people that are successful say this, they'll say, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah.
That's a lie. What they should say is, if I can do it, someone else can do it. That is true. That if one person can do it, there is another person who can do it. But just because I can do something, that does not mean that anyone listening to the sound of my voice can do it. Because your talent, your giftings, your opportunity, your skill, your society, your genes, your destiny in life, whatever you want to call it, there are a bunch of factors that are in play that determine success when it comes to complicated things. Uncomplicated things, that's true. If I can fold a piece of paper, you can fold a piece of paper. That's fine. This doesn't apply to non-complicated things, but difficult things, just because somebody else does it doesn't mean you can. And it's a mistake to assume that that's your proof of concept. What makes more sense is if that's the direction you want to go, what are some habits? What's some knowledge? What's some skills? What's something that I need to know that's going to take me in that direction? And then you apply that information, you try to go in that direction. And when you meet resistance, you evaluate, do I keep doing what I'm doing and just push through? Do I stop what I'm doing altogether and go a different route? or do I need to modify what I'm doing? And you have to make these decisions constantly. There is no set path. I don't care what your vision board looks like. I don't care what somebody else's path was. I don't care if it's your twin sibling who has done this exact same thing. The reality is your path is most likely going to look different. And if you set off trying to walk somebody else's path in life, you're going to be really frustrated because there's no identical pattern there, which is the problem with saying, say these words, do this thing.
Yep.
Follow my exact model for practice and you can be successful too. And it's like, well, you might be able to follow that exact model for practice and you may even make some good money doing it. You might also hate yourself because you're not that person. Like that person enjoys, we talked about, I told you like about the worst poster thing. So one of the things we're going to do here as we finish up was we're just going to talk about bad chiropractic posters. This actually started as a joke, like that we were going to do a podcast about bad chiropractic posters, and then John and I kind of both started looking at bad posters, and then it turns out we showed up prepared. So
turns out I'm still looking to find a good one.
Yeah. But the one I told you I can't find. It was from a group. It was from Practice Evolution. So I'll name names. So when I first started practice, I assumed it was going to be easy. And I thought, like, I'm good with people. I'm good with my hands. Like, I'm, whatever. I'm going to do great. I'm awesome. Whatever. And that first year was a massive struggle. It was huge. It was first couple of years for me, it was a massive struggle. And so I had a friend of mine that said like, oh, there's this guy that he does this coaching thing. Like, I think he could help. And I sort of just picked him because he picked him. You know what I mean? It was just like, I didn't really put any thought into it. And it was this doctor's name's Ogie Rizal. I don't even know if he does a thing anymore. I don't think he does, but he had this Practice Evolution program. The problem with the program, the main problem with the program, there's a lot of problems with the program. The main problem with the program was it was completely focused on being a pediatric chiropractor. I don't want to be a pediatric chiropractor. And I sat in this thing listening to someone, and I sort of got sucked into, he's successful, he's made a lot of money, he's got a nice car. I sort of got sucked into these things, and I completely disconnected myself from, it's like someone's offering a ladder for me to climb, the ladder of success, and it's like not, it's like leaned up against the wrong wall or whatever. It's not my ladder. It's his ladder. And it's like, and that's his whole program is he takes his dream and his model and his way of being, and he basically is trying to create a bunch of little Ogies around the universe. And he just wants everybody to be him. And that's going to be the solution. And I struggled with that so bad because I was following exactly what he said to a T. And it even did, honestly, it helped me make more money. And I hated my practice. I hated my life. I hated everything about that phase of my career because I was trying so hard to be someone else. And I wasn't just taking the things that he taught and go, oh, I see there's something there. There's something, I can learn something from that and I can apply it to me and my path. And I was trying so hard to walk somebody else's path in life. And it was super frustrating, even though I was making more money. It's just not, it's not smart. And people do it all the time. You got to find your own way.
And I think more about time than anything. I don't know if it's morbid or where this comes from, but you talked about the people that would go to your funeral and that kind of thing. I think all the time about like the fact that, I deal with patients every day whose lives are not going the way they thought they would, right? That's the whole point is like,
whose life is?
There's a lot of unknowns, right? And like we spend, we have a finite amount of time. That is a definite, number, and we don't even know what it is. And so to spend your time, forget your money. Like you can always make more money doing something, right? Money's out there to access. Like it, there's lots of ways to pad your pockets. But I care more about my time. And it's like if you're spending your time like you were in your practice and it's not fulfilling or it's making your life worse, and not allowing you to then go home and show up for your family and give them your best too. It's like, man, that's not it. And I've talked with too many chiropractors, and I'm not a business guy. I'm not a guru. I'm not none of that. Just talking with friends, and how many of them are just like, their practice is wearing them out, and,
Yeah.
and from all appearances looks super successful, but like you said, they're trying so hard to fit in to a model that is not congruent with their values that it's like, I don't want to spend my time that way, right? It's like I don't want to have my life be a drag, just hoping that eventually something will click or there will be some breakthrough if I just keep my head down and pushing that boulder up the hill. At some point it's going to be meaningful to me. And I've been in that mode before too, and it's just like, man, this sucks. This is not it, And that's why I kind of like migrated towards more of a micro practice model. It's like, I like people, but not that much, Like I don't want to see 100 people a day. Are
Yeah.
you kidding me? Like the thought of that is exhausting, and I can't do good work like that. And so, again, it's like learning and knowing yourself is a challenge, and you have to kind of iterate. And that means there's going to be failures or false starts or,
Yeah.
points where the resistance is just you're going in the wrong direction. It's not that it's just a hurdle to overcome. It's like you're pushing yourself in the wrong direction. And
that needs to be one of the options. That needs to be one of the options on the table. It's entirely possible that you're going in the right direction. It's just harder than you thought. Yeah. And you just need to keep on. And it's entirely possible that you're going in the right direction, but you need to modify your approach. It's also entirely possible that you're going in the wrong direction, and that needs to be a part of the evaluation process, and we need to be honest with ourselves. And I'll tell you, I went through the exact same thing where I got stuck with these high volume guys my first exposure to coaching at all was when I was a student, and it was like a student program or whatever. And it was basically like, if you're not seeing 300 people a week, you're not a real chiropractor. I mean, like that's like the base number for being a real chiropractor. Mm-hmm. And I went and shadowed in these offices, these like CBP doctors and stuff that were seeing like 120, 150 people in a day. And it was just, and I just thought that's normal. That's the direction I'm going to go. That's what success looks like. And I really struggled with the fact that when it got north, like 35 to 40 is like kind of was like a nice spot for me, where it's kind of like under 40, I'm good, I'm fine, whatever. But north of 40, I kind of had this internal resentment to my patients for having the gall to like bug me on this day. And then it was like above 50, it got worse. And it's like, and I had days where I was like, in the 60s and even I think probably the most I ever saw in a day was like in the like high 60s, low 70s. I hated those days. I hated it. And I not only hated the day, I hated my staff for scheduling the people. I hated the people for showing up. Like I had so much internal resentment. And it's like, but I thought I'm supposed to see more than this. Mm-hmm. And the people I was around that were seeing more, they were excited and they were happy and they were energized, and I hated it. And it took me a really long time to just be honest with myself and say, I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. I don't want to be that guy. I'm okay not being that guy. And that doesn't make me less. And I was very insecure about those internal feelings that I knew were there. I was fully aware of them, but I wasn't saying anything, because I don't want someone to look at me in a bad way or think I'm not a real chiropractor. I'm not really committed to changing the world or whatever nonsense it was going through my head.
Yeah, and that's kind of a relic of an era of bygone times. In chiropractic, where you just kind of come one, come all, serve the masses kind of a thing. And there are still some people in that mode, and that's fine. Any business, you'll see that, right? Like you might meet a roofer and he's got a small crew, and his deal is like, I'm going to give you a white glove experience. And then you got the other roofing company that's like, we're trying to take over the state, right? Like we're going to do every roof in Colorado, right? It's like, and there are different modes and different reasons for people's motivation to do what they're doing. But I think in a profession that is very sort of, I guess, purpose driven, if you want to say, there is this comparison thing, this judgment thing of like, well, the more people you're seeing means the more valuable you are to humanity, right? And it's like, that's not true. You could do the wrong thing a bunch of times, and it doesn't mean that it's good. So I think a lot of us feel judged or feel this like sense of less than if we don't aspire to that. But it's just not it's not the whole conversation, right? It's like, again, what chiropractors think of me as a chiropractor is dropping lower and lower on the scale of my identity by
And
the
it
day,
should.
right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us struggle with that in the beginning because we're trying to find our footing. We're trying to be affirmed. We're looking for our practice to affirm our decision to be a chiropractor, right?
Yep.
I'm helping people. They're telling me I'm awesome. I'm making a lot of money. That means this was a good decision. And it can be different ways, you know. And I hope that folks are kind of hearing through the like dads talking here that like, you know, we don't want to be pessimistic. And if your heart is to do that, and you have the skills and you have the motivation and the support and the coaching and the systems to do that at a high level, like we're cheering you on.
Yeah.
We're also just saying for the folks that don't relate to that or have been banging their head up against the wall trying to relate to that, that's okay too. You know, like your version of success in chiropractic is unique to you. And that might mean, you know, you have a micro practice and you don't have the option to see more than 20 people a day. Or you might work 2 days a week, or you might be so on fire that you need to be out screening every weekend, and that's what makes you feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
Those are all options, but it's so independent. You know, it's so dependent on your life circumstances and you know, so many things that don't often get presented in the conversations about, hey, come up here to the stage and talk about how, you know, after my 56-day boot camp, like it transformed your life and practice. It's like, you know, there's so much nuance and context to it. So have conversations with folks. You know, I think some of the best mentors we have are the ones that don't answer the questions, right? It's like you ask them a question and they answer with a question, right? They probe. They try to get you to figure it out for yourself rather than here's my blueprint, you know, to success. So,
I know. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So seek those people out. I think like it's a good idea to have people that speak into your life that don't just tell you what you want to hear all the time and just don't always just pat you on the back, but they care enough to have difficult conversations about this stuff and like call you on your BS and help you, you know, really sort through the important stuff, you know, because the superficial stuff is how many visits you see, how much you collect per visit, how many new patients did you have, what award did you receive at the conference this year? Like that stuff's all superficial, and there's a path toward that, but doesn't necessarily mean that you'll feel fulfilled. And I'm down with more chiropractors being fulfilled. I think that's a benefit. That's a net benefit to our profession to have more fulfilled, not burnout, you know, not unsatisfied, bummed out chiropractors showing up presenting their patients every day.
Yeah. It is the things you're talking about the things the chiropractors oftentimes focus on when in terms of success aren't the things that at the end of your life you're going to be measuring your life by. They aren't. And there's nothing wrong with those things. There's nothing wrong with seeing more people and whatnot, but you can't I think it's important in life to keep the most important things. And when you are measuring your success and your life and the time you're spending and all of that stuff on things that are not ultimately important. You know, I remember my grandma, when my grandma passed away, my dad and I had to go to the house, and we were kind of the ones that were cleaning out the house and doing the stuff. And so the family came in and kind of took what they wanted. You know, it was like the deciding who gets what and just different things that grandma had. And then an auctioneer came in and took everything he could hawk off, you know, and make, you know, because he was looking to sell some stuff and he was going to make a portion and the family was going to get the money and whatever. After that was all done, my dad and I show up at the house and we pulled up a dumpster that's the size of a tractor trailer. And we spent the entire weekend, because my grandma had lived in that house since my dad was a kid, you know, so we spent the entire weekend after the family had taken what they wanted, after the auctioneer took everything that he could hawk, and we pulled all this stuff out and we're filling this dumpster. And I remember it was about 3/4 of the way full. And my dad and I were kind of just taking a break, and we were sitting in some little like folding lawn chairs in the yard. And I'm looking at this dumpster, and I remember taking a picture, and I texted to my buddy and I said, just a reminder, someday someone's going to pull up to your house with a dumpster and throw your stuff away. And it was this moment of like, my grandma worked so hard, and for some of this stuff, and it was so important to her. And at the end of her life, like, this is just stuff. And there's nothing wrong with stuff. Stuff is awesome. I love my stuff. But my stuff is not the reason I do the things I do. And if it is the reason you do the things you do, and that stuff could be numbers, it could be the size of your office, it could be your car, it could be your house, whatever. If the reason, your why is your stuff, you're missing it. There has to be something in your life that is, it has to be. If there's not something more important in your life than your stuff, I feel really sorry for you. And
yeah, this is a conversation about identity. You know, it's like, who are you as a person? You know, what do you value and respect about yourself as a person? Right? Because at the end of the day, people are going to like us, not like us. They'll listen to this and be like, these assholes don't know what they're talking about. Like, you know, and that's okay. You know, I understand, like, when you share your opinion, you're open to criticism. But as a person with an identity that belongs to me and is informed by, like you said, all your life experiences and the people that are around you and the interactions that you have day in and day out, it's like, if your identity is rooted or grounded in your practice success, when your practice is doing good, you feel good about yourself, right?
Yeah.
When your practice is not doing good, which inevitably those ebbs and flows happen to everybody. It doesn't matter if you've got a $1 million practice or not. The ebbs and flows come. If you're in a down, then all of a sudden your identity takes a hit, right? As a person, I'm failing. As a person, I'm a failure. You know, as a human being who's trying to be there for other people, I'm a loser, right? It's like, that's not the headspace you want to be in if you're encountering resistance. And I was there before, you know, I've been there before, where it's like, man, I'm riding high if I had a ton of new patients in a week, you know, and if I had a month where my collections were less than they were last month, it's like, oh my God, I'm losing it. I suck, you know, like, I have to fix myself. And that's what this self-help guru stuff tells you, is like, if you have a negative outcome in your life, you have to fix yourself. And that's just not realistic, right? It's like, it's not normal. And I think it does more harm than good when you're so focused on that mode of, you know, self promotion and like personal development, that anytime something goes wrong, it means that you suck or that you're doing something wrong or you have to reinvent yourself. That's just not true. I've seen folks go down that road, and it's, the highs are high, but the lows are low, right? And I'm down to like cool it and have a nice even keel, you know?
Listen, pride and depression are both situations where people are thinking too much of themselves. And it is, both of them are. And people think that they might think, they understand that pride is, but then they often don't understand that depression is. And I think that the thing we should be trying to do is help someone else. You know, help someone else. And that someone else could be your kids, it could be your spouse, it could be whatever. But you're not the center of the universe. And when you make yourself the center of the universe, it's a sad place to be. And
and it diminishes other people, right? And like, that's not our message as chiropractic. It's an empowering message. It's not a diminishing message that we have for the world. That like, there's a limited supply of health, right? That there is a limited supply of like people doing different things, right? That if we're not all in the same mode or of the same mind, that's bad. And that's ridiculous. So hopefully, you know, as folks have been listening to us sort of ramble and rant along these lines, like, if you relate, I hope that you're encouraged, you know, and maybe have a framework for thinking about, like, God, this resistance I'm meeting, like, you know, like Jerry said a couple times now, am I going in the wrong direction? Do I need to modify what I'm doing, or is this just part of it? You know, and like, hopefully some of this conversation gives you a framework for understanding that, because then you can make choices. And that's really kind of all we have in life, is like the ability to make a choice right now of what we need to do next. And, you know, those choices carry a lot of weight, but at the same time, like, I think we can also, you know, cool it and not make such a big deal of ourselves, and just, we're going to make mistakes. You know, we had a brief chat before this about, like, you know, reflecting on some things about practice, and it's like, yeah, I've done everything wrong. You know, it's like, name a thing. Like, I've changed pretty much everything. I've iterated and navigated, and I'm one of those people that started practice after school, And one of my mentors was like, that takes equal parts ignorance and arrogance. And it kind of describes where I was at that time in life, but I did, the only thing I had going for me was like, I never thought I would not make it. My thing was like, I'll figure it out. Like, there are people who have done this, I can do it. Like, I'm not trying to reinvent an industry here. I'm just trying to create a sustainable small business, that I can do my work in. And it's totally possible. So when it comes to like us having these conversations, it's because we've struggled, it's because we've been there and worked through it. And I am certain that I'm not done struggling, in life and practice.
Yeah.
Like, I think you start to realize that there is life after failure. There's life after struggle. Like, the next up comes after the down, and like over time you start to, work through several of these cycles, and it kind of, I don't know, it like takes some of the drama out of it. It's like, oh, I had a crappy month in practice. Like, let me just dial in. Have I been slacking in these areas? Yeah, I have. I need to tighten up. Is this pandemic outside of my control? For sure. 2 years or 3 years into practice, like, it's all part of it. But you realize that, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and there's life beyond whatever you feel like you're struggling through right now. And, we're living proof, and we're going to keep working on it.
I think it's important for people to understand that there's an inverse relationship between ease and fulfillment. And the things in life that are easy tend to be less fulfilling. It's the struggle is, if you think about movies and you think about what are the greatest stories, moments? Yeah. What are the greatest things these things, the stories and autobiographies and things, they're struggles, and there's an overcoming thing. Like, you don't, a movie where it's like, oh, it starts in the beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end, and everybody was happy and there was no problems. Like, that's not interesting. That's not an interesting story. And so if you want to have a fulfilled life, it's going to be required that you do difficult things, because even if you just in your personal life, like, being a good parent is difficult, and being a good spouse is difficult, and being a good chiropractor is difficult. And so, the things being difficult is really a setup for things being fulfilling. But you can't, going about it in a right way is going about it in the best way, asking questions, improving, trying new things, really taking an honest assessment of what's actually going on in your life, what's going on in your practice, what are you doing well, what could you do better? Like, that's all just part of the process. But the fact that it's difficult, like, being discouraged because it's difficult is a misunderstanding of how satisfying things happen. They happen out of difficulty. They do not happen any other way.
And don't we love to say, embrace the journey, right? It's not about the destination. Embrace the journey. But, we tend to put the outcome on a pedestal, and sometimes, like, lose track of the fact that, what you're saying is 100% true. And the quicker I kind of got my head wrapped around this idea that, like, for my life and practice, like, I just need to know what I have to show up and do today. Like, good, better, or worse. Like, if I'm having an awesome day, great. Did I still do all the things I needed to do? If it's a crappy day, like, did I still do all the things I needed to do? Like, there are habits and disciplines and real practical, pragmatic things that you can engage with and understand that you're on the road. You're continuing the journey, and you're not just subject to how things feel, and you're just at the whim of whatever the latest, emotion or sensation is, and that's a tough way to live. And we see patients that do that with their health, right? It's like things are going well, so they stop implementing practices that got them to that point. And then they have a crisis, and then they have to try to work their way out of it. And we have these conversations with folks about habits and routines and disciplines and expectations and, things in our control and things outside of our control. I think it's funny how sometimes we don't necessarily turn it inward and go, yeah, you know what? Like, with my practice or my life or my satisfaction as a chiropractor or lack thereof, I can use that same framework to get to a better place. And for some people, that might mean they move out of active day-to-day practice like you did, and that's totally fine. You're still of service to chiropractors and your fellow man. And for others of us, it might mean that we, like, modify our practice style or model and, change that over time. And I'm going to try to use my best podcasting skills in the world, but, like, to segue to this conversation about the posters.
I was going to say, it sounds
Because-
like you're talking about the road to recovery.
Yes, because there is a decision time, right? No, but so we get into these modes sometimes where we're just doing things because it's what we were told to do. Half the conversation about these crazy posters is like, okay, so when you're setting up your practice, make sure you get this poster, that one.
Yeah.
And in your report of findings, you point at this and you compare their x-ray and you tell them, look how bad it is. And then eventually you go like, what? You know, like you get this random moment of objective clarity and you're like, this is crazy. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. So this whole conversation about the posters started with like, you know, if you just take a step back as a person, not a chiropractor who's emotionally attached to the message, and just look at some of this stuff we present to people, it's crazy. Yeah. And so I do want to hit on that because I think it's a funny way to kind of wind down a heavy conversation. Yeah. But at the same time, I don't want to miss out on that chance.
Yeah. So here, a couple things, and we'll do this. We'll kind of tighten up the end of this and go through just a couple of these. I think I will say, of the ones I have and the one you already showed me, you definitely win, because I did not think about that one, and I think it's the ultimate kind of just silly thing. But I actually, so my wife and I, babies due next month, and we were doing these birthing classes, and the lady that's the midwife that's doing these birthing classes did it out of a chiropractor's office. So I was in this chiropractor's office, and it was weird because it's been a long time since I've been, I occasionally go into some other chiropractor's office, but not much. Most of the stuff I do is online. So it's like I'm in my chiropractor's office, and I was in this office and I'm looking around at the different posters and different things. And I was kind of like, that's dumb. That's dumb. That's dumb. And it's not even necessarily dumb from a chiropractic perspective. It's just dumb from the standpoint of, I was looking at it going, unless you know what they're trying to say, you don't know what they're actually saying. Because if you just read it and you have no background information to the context of where that even comes from, it sort of sounds like they're saying that they treat ADHD, and that they it seems like you're saying that you're doing things that I know they wouldn't say that. They wouldn't say that. But that poster kind of makes you seem like you think you can cure everything, and it's not super helpful. And so I had that. And for
sure, there have been new patients or family members of patients that sat down, looked at that thing and went, what in the world? Yeah. This is not what I thought this was about. And then their guard goes up, right? So if the more context is required for a visual, thing in your office to make sense, that's probably a sign that it's not well done. And just because it's a cutesy version of something that's already been done, and it's like, looks like it came off the shelf at Home Goods or whatever, it still doesn't mean that it's not sending, the wrong message. So that's part of what motivates this discussion too, is like, just take yourself out of the equation and look at stuff with fresh eyes and go,
So I'm going to pull this one up because we both had this on our thing. So I'll do this one, and then you can show the one that I think is the winner. So this is this Perfect Patient? Is that what this is? Probably.
There's like a bunch of them that have the same sort of reworked thing.
Yeah. So I'll tell you why I object to this, and the one that I was trying to find from Practice Evolution, from Ogie's thing. It's similar to this, but it looks worse. So it's actually the same idea, but this one looks, just visually looks better. The reason that I picked this one, and you can maybe say why you picked it, but the reason I picked it is because all the ones that I was looking at, I was thinking, if it requires someone to stand there and explain it, it's not a good poster. It's just, and this, who's standing here looking at this that's not in a class and getting anything from it? It's too much. And this is the type of thing that, if you think about a billboard, for instance, and I had this conversation with one of my clients just recently. They were wanting to do, it's a practice that's been around forever. They still do old school advertising where they're at. And she's like, I want to do a billboard, I want to run some ideas by you. And I told her, I said, I heard this a long time ago. I parroted it. It's not my original thought. The most successful billboard is the one that says Gun Show, May 7th through the 9th at the convention center. because it's no one's confused. It's very easy to
neon
read.
green, probably.
Yeah. You got everything that you needed to know. And I said, so just keep it simple. And I think that posters in your office should fall into the same category. So I'm a huge advocate of something that's eye-catching and easy to kind of read, easy to understand, because people are just walking by. This kind of violates all of that. So that's kind of my reason for why this annoys me.
So let's describe to the listeners. So we've got pulled up here, if you're not watching, the road to recovery, right?
Yeah.
We've all seen this in various forms and fashions. It's the one with the spaghetti lines of like suffering at the bottom all the way up to optimizing, right? It's like the road to wellness care. And there's all these like forks in the road where you have a decision to make about, whether you continue with chiropractic care and what that means for the rest of your life or not.
Yeah.
And, it's in the beginning, it talks about relief care, and then you're feeling better, so now it's decision time. Are you just going to, stop coming in and then regress back to
this
suffering?
This is a sales pitch.
Literally, yeah, that's what it is. Like, this is not scientific, because anybody who's dealt with any number of patients knows that folks enter our practice at various levels. To use this left-handed column here, they enter at various levels. Some folks are really suffering, and some folks they're not that bad, and they just need some fine-tuning. So the idea that everybody starts down here and you want to get all the way to the upper right where it's green, and we'll lay out the steps for you to get there. As if
that's everyone's goal, because I would say that's the mostly not people's goals is wellness. Like that's
I've
the
even
vast
seen
majority.
Versions of this that had timelines overlaid on it, where it was like the first 3 weeks, and it's usually upper cervical stuff. It's like retracing, and then you're in the next stabilizing phase, and it's like, what is this even based on? So I first got exposed to this in school. I went to Life University, and Guy Reekman was the president at the time, and he came from the Renaissance, right? And they had all this stuff. Yeah. And I remember being in a quote business class where they put this stuff up, and I'm looking at it like, I'm in chiropractic school. I'm trying to make sense of this situation here, and like, what are we even talking about? I'm like, if it doesn't make sense to me, and I have to memorize a script to explain this to someone, that's not the way my personality works. So you're right. It's busy. It's been redone several times to try to like clean it up and make it more palatable. But it still is, basically a way to convey this message to your patient. Once you start coming, like if you don't continue coming, you're going to get worse, right? Yep. And we don't believe that to be true. I don't think. That's not what our philosophy says per se. Yeah. Scientifically, we know that's not always the case. So it's just not my favorite.
Yeah, so anything that's like this, I actually have a couple other ones, and they're pretty much, like I said, it's sort of like the same idea. Anything that's busy like that, anything that's kind of obnoxious like that requires an explanation. I'm going to pull this off, and I had something very similar to the one that you have. Are you going to pull that one up?
So
you have the better version.
I've got a couple here, and I'm going to share one that not everybody will relate to if you didn't go to a kind of subluxation school, but it's this big 3 segments of a spine called subluxation, the silent killer.
Yeah, this is old school.
Yeah, it's.
Can you still buy them?
Oh yeah, I'm on this. They're $7.70. So, of course, it's right for $7.70.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of things wrong with this. Number one is this like insistence on a squashed nerve.
Yeah, the bone
out of place, squashing the nerve concept. Like that's just not the whole chiropractic message here. Yeah. And the silent killer. I mean, I did this whole podcast with Dr. John Chung about nocebos and about how our words are important. When we're communicating with folks, especially people that are suffering and they're trusting us as an authority figure, and we're saying crazy things to them, there's actually a physiological negative to that. And if we want folks to heal, then we need to understand that like using our words carefully is important, and telling people that because they have a backache, that beneath the surface is the silent killer. Yeah, that's crazy, right? And
not
this
ideal.
Not ideal, and that's the kind of stuff that makes us look crazy. So I don't even know where that term came from, that silent killer term, but that to me is there's no time or place for that in office. Yeah. I've got one more that's kind of like honorable mention here, and then I have the last one is the worst.
That was my favorite. Yeah.
But the stages of spinal degeneration, and a lot of people are gonna like be upset with that because, you know, again, this is one that's been used as kind of like the scare care tool of all tools, which is, you know, put up a lateral cervical, say, hey, Mary, you know, which stage are you in based on like this poster that I have hanging over my TV? And she goes, well, gee, doc, it looks like I'm phase 2. That's right. And if you don't sign up for my 72 visit care plan right now, you're going to progress to stage 3, and then it's going to be chronic pain and dysfunction for the rest of your life. So
do you have the one with symptoms also, all the bad stuff that's going to happen to you with the exactly.
So it's like, here's the deal. Again, if you've worked with patients, like I've seen some really gnarly X-rays in folks that felt and functioned okay. And I've seen some folks that their X-rays didn't look that bad and they were really tore up. So, you know, again, like I had a conversation with a patient this morning. She went to a, you know, knee doctor, and she was so impressed that he didn't say anything about her age and the level of arthritis that she had. He just wanted to have a conversation with her about how are you doing functionally, like what are your concerns or limitations, what strategies do we need to have in place so that you have a good life despite the fact that there's a couple bone spurs on your X-ray. And so I think we have to acknowledge at this point that that is true of the spine as well. And I'm not saying that like you should neglect talking to folks about the condition of their spine if they come to you and you take imaging. But I think it has to be interpreted in context. Again, if you just put this poster up in your waiting room and it's like, oh my God, I'm going to be scared to death that if I don't come in every week and get adjusted, I'm going to, you know, it even has on here prognosis, you know, it's like there's just more to it, you know, than what you see on the pictures.
Show that one up because I'm only seeing the subluxation one still.
Oh, okay.
Do you have it up there?
Let me, let me go back here. It's on a different
just pull
page.
it up real.
Can you see it here? Share this tab instead. There it is.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
There it is.
Yeah.
There's versions of it. You know, the one I've seen the ones with the cervical spine. This has all of them. And again, like this is one people could give me some hate for because they're like, but I was, you know, this is the central part of my report of findings is shown in their lateral cervical and telling them how bad they are. But I'll say this is the cream of the crop here.
Yes. This one's my favorite because it's been so long since I've seen. Yeah, it's been so long since I've seen a neuropathylator, and if for those of you who are just listening, it's basically it's got the brain and the spine, and like the nerves are going to different organs, and when you push a button, it lights up. So like if you push like the C1 button, it lights up the brain, or if you push I have not seen this in a long. It's the autonomic
nervous system chart.
Yeah,
with like
there's usually another one. Isn't there like a pair? There's like the autonomic, and then there's like the sympathetic, maybe, or something. Probably, I don't know.
Yeah, and this is one that like I remember they had in the clinic, the outpatient clinic at Life University, and literally nobody ever touched it. But it was like, again, with this bone on nerve obsession, it's like, are you going to go over and tell someone like, hey, you have a T4 subluxation, and if you see that I push this button here, the heart lights up. If we don't get that pressure off that nerve, your heart's going to wear out. You know, it's like, what are we talking about? So, and this is really old school. I don't even know if you could even get one now, but this was the first thing I thought of. And by the way, I Google searched this, and there were like a bunch of YouTube videos of doctors standing in front of this thing doing their lay lecture, you know, using it as the proof that chiropractic isn't just about the bones, right? It's about the nerves and organ health, and just crazy. Stop using
I'll
that
tell you
stuff.
one of the things that frustrates me, and then we'll kind of wrap this up, but one of the things that it does frustrate me about the chiropractic profession is that there's some things that are not, they're not invalid about the whole idea of the spine and the nervous system. There's some concepts there that are not invalid, but the conclusion jumps that chiropractors make especially within like the holistic, you know, your subluxation based chiropractic industry, where it's like, I'm a brain doctor, like I'm a nervous system doctor. It's like, please stop telling people that.
Don't get me started on that.
You are saying something that without a tremendous amount of context is at best questionable statement, and I would say it's misleading. It's like it's not what you are. That's like the analogy I always use is going to it's like going to a tire shop with a flat tire and being like, hey, do you repair tires? And they're like, we don't work with tires, we work with air. because the air is inside the tires. And it's like,
And that's the thing that's actually important.
Yeah, because the air is what inflates the tire. And it's like, can you fix
so
my
perfect.
tire? Well, we don't really fix tires. We just make sure that the air can be contained. And it's like, what? Like, what are you saying? Like, I'm going to go somewhere else. And chiropractors that do that to people where they're talking, they do this Jedi mind trick where they don't talk to people about what their concerns are. They don't talk to people about what their goals are. They talk to them about like, oh, your back hurts. Let's talk about your digestive system. Let's talk about your heart. Let's talk about these things that, oh, yeah, sure. Maybe if you adjust somebody, there's a difference. Maybe you adjust somebody and it affects your brain. Those are not the measurable things that you can do as a chiropractor. It's so ridiculously impractical to jump to that conclusion and to be like, oh, your power's on, your liver's functioning better. Chiropractors say dumb things all the time, and it drives me crazy.
I hear it from folks weekly that have been in other offices at some point in their life. You know, they're scared to death of going out of alignment because they think that it means that their organs are going to fail, right? It's like this is what they were told. They didn't come up with this on their own. This is what the chiropractor implanted in their mind, consciously and subconsciously, with the environment, with the posters, with the communication, you know, with the recommendations. And again, I don't think that's an empowering message. And I think most chiropractors that would be talking about function in that way are motivated to have an empowering message. And the flip of that is, people don't always understand it the way we want them to. They understand it the way they understand it. And that might be wrong, right? That's your point about like simple and complex. So again, I think like what we do is visually appealing, right? We're talking about structure and posture and alignment and different things like that. Like there is a visual component to helping folks understand the need and the solution that we have to offer. But there are creepier and less creepy ways to do it. And, you know, some of these holdover posters that I think are just kind of silly start conversations with folks that then you have to backpedal your way out of, right? Because if someone is reasonable and thoughtful and they go, well, my mom had stomach cancer, you know, and she passed away at age 48 from stomach cancer. Are you saying that if she would have just got her spine adjusted, that would have helped? And unfortunately, there are chiropractors that would probably answer that in the affirmative, right? But here's the deal. Like, we see all kinds of cool stuff improve, right? You talked about brain health. I've seen folks with hormonal issues resolve and all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Doesn't mean I'm going to go advertise everybody with hormone problems needs to get adjusted, right? Yeah. So, again, understanding, and this is where, like, as a clinician and as a provider, I'm always harping on people about, like, continuing to study and learn the science. Because if you don't have a good grasp, you're gonna be beholden to these models, you know, that are maybe not the best way to present our message, at least at scale.
I'm very middle of the road when it comes to philosophy in terms of how it applies as first chiropractors. And one of the things that I tell people all the time, because I seem to offend everybody, like, you know, the subluxation chiropractors get mad at me because I'm not subluxation-y enough. And they're disappointed because I used to do upper cervical, and then it's like, you know, they assume. And then the evidence-based chiropractors get mad at me because I think that it's not just about backs and necks. And I think that there's two ditches, and the one ditch is we're nervous system and brain doctors, and we don't work with bones. We work with the nervous system and the brain. That's one side that's ridiculous and stupid. The other side is we only work with bones and ligaments and muscles. That's stupid as well, because that is not, you cannot be intellectually honest as a chiropractor who has, even if you have a pain clinic. And I had this conversation before I even knew it was like a thing, because I started learning about a little bit about chiropractic philosophy. And my chiropractor that I had at the time, the only chiropractor I'd ever had, he never had said any of this stuff. He was a sports chiropractor and rehab guy. And so I remember going in there and being like, you know, what's the deal? You never said anything. And he told me, he says, look, I know that other things improve. I see my patients take less medicine. I see patients have things improve that we're not treating. They didn't come in here for it. But their overall health is improving from the fact that we're adjusting their spine, we're getting them more mobile, we're getting them moving, like all of these different things are happening. He says, I just don't make it the reason why people come in and the reason why I do what I do. And at the time, it's like, you know, when you really start getting into philosophy, you're like, oh, you're not a real chiropractor. But like both of them are, if he didn't even assume, and he was right. He did not make the assumption that it was all about backs and necks only. And if you're on either side of that street, you're wrong. And now this isn't about how you practice. You could have a more holistic practice if you want to, and focus primarily on non-structural things. And I think that's fine as long as you're being honest with people about what to expect and what you are and are not doing. I think that that's probably fine. And if you want to run a pain clinic, I think that's fine as well. But I just don't think we should act like we're right if we're on one side of those ditches, because we're not. Like, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And I'm a huge fan of the idea, if we could figure out how to measure that, like what are those benefits? How do we know when someone's experiencing those benefits? Like, the more we can figure out in terms of what's happening and who is it happening to, I am a huge fan of that, and I find it incredibly interesting. But at the moment, we don't have good ways of measuring that.
Well, we do even have some. I mean, those are scientific questions, though, right? So you can't answer scientific questions with philosophy. You can use outcome assessment tools. You can update your diagnostics. Like, you can get into the science of, like, how does this become quantitative, right? Because that's what you can actually do something with. Yep. And here's the other thing, like, from a business perspective, it's like under promise, over deliver kind of thing, right? Like, because if someone comes in, they go, oh my God, my kid has ADHD and I'm at my last, I'm at my wit's end trying to help this kid regulate. Yeah. And the kid comes in and the kid gets adjusted and the kid gets the benefits of chiropractic care, but it doesn't cure his ADHD. Does that mean chiropractic failed? Only because you set it up that way, right? Yeah. And so, under promise, over deliver. I have conversations with folks all the time about the stuff that improves in their life. They talk about their mood. They talk about their sleep. They talk about their productivity, their physical performance, their mental clarity. And they're like, do you think that has anything to do with it? And then we have a conversation, right? And it's like, good. Hey, guess what? Your body's just working better. That's awesome. Yeah. Like, turns out some of these minor structural things were really impactful for you. And that's great. We know what to do with it now so that you can continue to get the most out of your life and function at a level that allows you to live your life the way that you want to and need to. And all the things we were talking about earlier with ourselves, like to show up at work, to show up at home, to be fulfilled, to feel good, to bring the best to every interaction that you have. That's our message, right? So you don't have to buy into any of these crazy things just because that's what your mentor had, or the doctor that you went and saw as a kid that had in their office. Like, when I set my practice up, it was like, well, I'm an upper cervical guy, so I need this poster and that poster, and in my report of findings I have to do that. It's like, I've changed a lot of that because it just doesn't serve me now. And so I think we're trying to, like, peel the lid off the box here and go, like, hey, there's a whole lot of fresh air outside of the box. Like, go ahead and take a whiff and see how it feels. Like, you might find that there's some real value, to expanding your horizons and challenging your assumptions and your bias, and, like, flirting with this idea that you can do it your way, and you can do it with a sense of honesty and integrity and a high level of, like a white glove service for these folks to have an incredible healthcare experience and actually get help, which they haven't done in a lot of other places. So for all those reasons, like, to wind down this conversation, again, as chiropractors, we talk a big game about an empowering message, and sometimes our actions don't match that talk, and sometimes we get ourselves into these modes where we're not bringing the best of ourselves forward to our communities and to our practices. And so I think in summary here, like, the key things are self-awareness. It's understanding what's really important to you, your values, your chiropractic and personal values, the ways that you value spending your time as a human being, the types of folks you want to see in your practice, and the clinical objectives that you have, the way that you feel that you've done your job as a chiropractor. It's different, right? Like your example about the pediatric chiropractic experience. Like, when you figure that out for yourself, craft the rest of this, the messaging, the modeling, the visuals, the assessments, the procedures, the language, the conversations, the connections with your folks, all that stems from that. And you can have one of those practices where you are an incredible resource to the people that find you, and they're happy to refer to you, and they're happy to continue to trust you with questions, concerns, health challenges, maintenance care, wellness care, whatever is important to you. You can craft things in a way that make you such a valuable resource. So don't diminish yourself or leave yourself stuffed in that box of what you think you should want or you think you should do as a chiropractor, and let that authentic chiropractor come out of you. Because man, I'll tell you what, like when you meet somebody and they're focused in on that, you see it, and their practice could be completely different than someone else who's also locked in, but it feels different. It feels different to your patients. It feels different for your profession, and I'm all in on that model. So if you guys have questions, concerns, like any of this stuff resonated with you, if there's something that you have a specific question about, like get in touch with us. I mean, I won't speak for Jerry, but like I'm an open book. So if you want to reach out to me and run any of this stuff by me, I'm all ears. I want to see everybody succeed, but I'm also on the flip side of that, not afraid to be critical of stuff that's ridiculous. So, just be aware. If you come at me with some BS, you're going to hear that.
I tell you, the last thing I'll say is this. As time has gone on, I have started prioritizing excellence over specifics. And I think that I try to encourage chiropractors to commit to being excellent. If you choose a particular technique, like I would rather go to an activator chiropractor who's excellent than an upper cervical chiropractor who's not. Even though all things being equal, I wouldn't make that same decision. But I will choose excellence over non-excellence. So if you're going to be a small business owner, a chiropractor that has your own practice, really commit to being excellent. And you're not going to be in the beginning, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but commit to being excellent. And if you're going to be a dad, you're going to be a parent, whatever that is, like just the things that are important to your life, you really just have to commit to being excellent and understand that those are going to be, it's going to be difficult. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine.
Awesome.
Is there anything you want to say before we get off of here? We've been on here a while. We can go ahead and wrap this up. Anything you want to say?
No, I think it speaks for itself, and I'm interested to hear how it's received. So if you get feedback, positive, negative, or indifferent, I'd be curious to know how this lands. A little bit of a different type of episode than you usually do. So hope the audience found some value in it, and if you stuck with us this long, you either love it or hate it. So thanks for listening to us either way.
And if you have those posters, shame on you. No, can't.
Just know that we know, okay?
Just know that we know. Hey, that's not even me selling posters. I don't even have posters to sell. I had considered designing posters at one point in time, and I just I sort of got, I don't really want to. I don't think so.
Nice.
All right,
awesome,
man.
Jared.
Well, I'm going to wrap this
appreciate it.
up. I'll talk to you later, okay?
Thank you.
All right. See ya.